Welcome to the special edition of KOIN Now. I'm Chief Meteorologist Josh Cozart, all as we prepare for the return of some winter weather for us here across the Pacific Northwest. A KOIN 6 weather alert is staying in place as we have that potential for a snowflake or two to once again return to parts of the Pacific Northwest. This, of course, all coming as we prepare for our first real taste of the winter season. And this is going to be an ongoing trend that we carry over all the way through Thursday. So this is not a one-day event and we are done as we prepare for cooler temperatures to flirt with the freezing mark during the overnight time frame and eventually bring back some snowflakes to the lowest elevations of our surrounding area. Over the past 24 hours or so, picking up on sites just like that. Snow falling out towards the Silver Falls State Park area yesterday afternoon, and similar sites like that again possible tonight into Wednesday and Thursday. Just the same with parts of Southwest Washington. Also picking up on those white flakes coming down amongst a dark nighttime sky. That could be the potential for us at least through Thursday morning before temperatures begin to warm. We kind of climb out of this winter weather pattern, although it is brief in comparison to what we have been experiencing for much of this winter season. A look across our area over the past little while, expecting to hold on to those gray, cloudy skies. That's going to help to really slow temperatures from falling too much below the freezing mark. So that's the good news, as we do anticipate some of those rain showers that we have seen throughout the day to transition back over into a few snow flurries for us tonight into tomorrow. Are the impacts going to be major? Not likely, as many of us are now starting to fall back into the upper 30s over the past few hours. Radar and satellite over the past few hours as well being depicted with those blues. That's a good indication of where snow is falling. It's primarily over the high terrain of the Cascades, but again, this is just over the past several hours. Zooming into the Portland-Vancouver metro area, you can see how some of those rain showers have the potential to flip over to the snow showers. That is a growing concern, especially during the overnight hours into the early morning. Not only for Wednesday, but again for Thursday as well. So that's something we're going to be keeping a very close eye on as we work our way through the next little while. Regardless, though, this has been really beneficial for the high terrain of the Cascades, picking up on some snowy conditions, a sight for sore eyes, because this has not necessarily been the case for much of the Pacific Northwest. The Cascades of Oregon, Washington, missing out on that snow potential. And you can see really over the past several hours picking up on just that. Comes as no surprise because the National Weather Service is keeping that winter weather advisory in effect through 4 a.m. on Friday. So on top of what we've already managed to see in the snow department over the mountains, that is just going to continue to add up as we push our way, not only through the end of this week, but I'm still anticipating a few of those snow showers to get underway for much of the region as we move our way into early next week. That does come with a bit of a warming trim for the valley, so that's good news for us. But I think we will still be holding on to that winter weather potential over the Cascades well into the start of next week. Now, this latest system, it comes in the form of a low-pressure system sweeping in from the Pacific Ocean. That's going to bode well better for the Cascades of Oregon, picking up on top of what we've already seen over the past 48 hours, close to 6 inches to a foot. That's a welcome sight. Slightly less for our friends up towards Washington. The Cascades only picking up about 3 to 6 inches in places like Mount Rainier, Mount Baker as well. So kind of reversing the roles of what we have been seeing for much of this winter. Washington's mountains getting hit with not as much snow as they would like, but significantly more than what we here in Oregon have been experiencing. So good to see that these totals are starting to rise to really help out many of our area ski resorts, as the past 24 hours has brought measurable inches of snow back to the Cascades. I've been seeing a lot of folks all over social media soaking up the bit of winter that we are experiencing return to the Cascades. Now, I mentioned that low-pressure system. It's sweeping its way through our area. It's also dragging the jet stream further to the south. So that's the gatekeeper between the warm air to the south, or in this case, also to the west with that high out over the Pacific. But the colder pocket of air resides over much of the Pacific Northwest. That's also, with its counterclockwise rotation, able to help to pull in a little bit more of that moisture from the Pacific into the inland areas. And when it collides with those colder temperatures, talking about overnight lows falling back into the 30s in many cases. That is what is giving us that better chance to maybe pick up on a few more of those snowflakes. Our best chance, and maybe our only chance, to see winter precipitation moving our way through this week or this season, as well as that low pressure system really kind of anchors itself over the western half of the country, at least through Thursday. Then we start to get influence with that high ever so slightly starting to push its way back into our area. Kind of flatlines the jet stream a little bit, which bodes well for us in fears of winter weather. We keep the wet weather, but temperatures, they'll be warming back up into the upper 40s. Overnight lows, not as cold. We're talking about upper 30s. So that's when that snow potential really starts to fade, working our way into Friday, the weekend, and well into next week as well. So let's go ahead and time out with our futurecast, what we anticipate to see. I've also added our temperatures to this map just so you can get an idea of the impacts it could have on many of our roadways, because that's going to be the most impactful for us as we move our way through this work week. So temperatures as of 8 a.m. tomorrow, mid-30s for us. So any precipitation that is on the ground is not expected to freeze, at least for the lowest elevations. Once you go above about 1,000 feet, that's where it could be cold enough that you could see some slick spots develop on the side streets, especially that aren't necessarily traveled on as much. As long as your temperature is above 32 degrees, you're not expecting to come across any of that frozen precipitation. Now, we could see a snowflake or two tonight into tomorrow. But right now, a lot of the forecast models are starting to trend slightly drier as this colder air moves in, which, again, is good news, at least for us not seeing any major impacts with our roadways. By tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday, expecting everything to flip back over to rain, highs back up into the low to mid-40s for us. This is a snapshot of about 4 o'clock on our Wednesday afternoon. Snow showers, yes, still persistent over the Cascades, the foothills of the Cascades. You'll even notice Detroit at 33 degrees. Snow totally survivable in those temperatures. Even over the Coast Range, expecting to see a nice dusting. So if you look off into the distance, either to the west or to the east, you should be able to see some of those cumulative snow showers on the hillsides at least. But again, steering clear of the valley locations, and that does include the West Hills. Temperatures are really just going to be well too warm for our Wednesday afternoon and evening. Then we get this next little burst of moisture, and I'm actually going to kind of back it up just a little bit for us because things are getting a little interesting here. By about the time we roll into midnight on Thursday into 1 a.m., 2 a.m., you'll notice that rain transitions back over to snow. Temperatures are still above freezing. They're in the upper 30s. That's a very real scenario where we could potentially see maybe some of those snowflakes survive within those warmer layers near the surface. That, however, does not mean it's going to be sticking around for very long. Yes, you could be under a very heavy snow shower here and there, and then maybe it starts to accumulate on the grassy areas, tree limbs, maybe even some side streets that don't have anybody driving over them. That is a potential as we start to work our way into the early morning hours on Thursday, especially as the traffic is a lot less. You might see a light dusting on roads, low impact. Again, that's the big takeaway. However, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some schools had delays just for any of those schools maybe located at higher elevations, or travel is a little bit on the trickier side for some of those side streets because our highways are pretty much going to remain just on the west side as we move our way, again, into Thursday morning. Thursday morning is the real key for us here, but those temperatures still expected to be into the upper 30s. So as that snow potential starts to fade, we quickly melt anything that may have fallen on those roads or even the grassy spots. It's not going to stick around for any more than maybe an hour to 2 hours at best, and then everything flips back over to rain as we move our way into the mid hours for us come Thursday afternoon, even during the midpoint of the morning on Thursday. And then I even think by the end of the day, we could even see a few sun rays breaking through the clouds as temperatures, again, they cool back into the upper 30s, but not below freezing. So that chance of any frozen or icing conditions is next to none. Now, I say that with a grain of salt, per se. If you're a small local business owner, maybe you do want to sprinkle down some of those icing, demelters, sand, whatever you would feel comfortable with on those sidewalks, as the threat of maybe a snowflake or two or light dusting is a potential, again, for an hour or two on many of those surfaces that aren't necessarily traveled upon as frequently as say, a highway. Now, the snow elevation levels, they continue to hover right around 700 feet or so, and we are expecting to see it bottom out really come Friday morning. But the difference is we could see it fall as low as 300 feet, but we just won't have any available moisture. So that means there is no snowfall come Friday. That's when the KOIN 6 weather alert comes to an end. So that is really not a concern for us as things quickly begin to warm. Snow elevation levels start to rise above 4,000 feet. We're close to 5,000 feet by Saturday. I think we could lower it maybe slightly for us as we move our way into early next week, all as that potential for snow remains over the Cascades. So here's a bit of a diagram that I really like to show to kind of time out what we are looking at. I'll go ahead and take it full so you have a better idea. So this is where we potentially could be sitting below freezing for us. That's really Wednesday morning. By sunrise hour, we quickly warm back up, and that's not everybody. I still think Portland proper, downtown, is going to remain above that freezing mark. A few flurries, maybe a wintry mix, as a few of those brief scattered showers in the form of rain or maybe even a snowflake or two moves our way into the afternoon. Then it's just rain. No concerns there. Then as we start to cool in the late evening time frame, that's where a wintry mix is possible for parts of the I-5 corridor. And then as we work our way into the past sunset hour Wednesday night into Thursday, again, midnight, that's kind of showtime. And that takes us all the way through about the sunrise hour where that snow starts to subside. It transitions just back over to rain. But that's where we have that potential, the small opportunity where we could potentially see a bit of that activity as far as the dusting of snow on the sidewalks, on the roads, side streets, higher elevations, the West Hills. All of that is a possibility. But after that, it really starts to fade. Not a concern for us. And as we continue past that point, snow is out of the question. Now, I also want you to take a grain of salt with this image, which we have seen actually pulled back just a little bit as opposed to some of our earlier models on Tuesday afternoon. We're seeing the potential for maybe that light dusting on the west side of town, west of the river, east, Gresham, even Sandy, slightly looking to be just more so on the rain side. But again, I still think that dusting is a potential. And even these kind of aggressive colors, you might say, really not a good indication of what will actually be on the ground. I don't think that this is going to be enough for you to bring out your tape measure or your ruler or your yardstick. Any of that, that's not anticipated, as a lot of this is going to be melting as it hits the surface. Maybe on some metal, colder surfaces, it might stick around for 30 minutes more, but that's going to be the extent. So I'm always cautious about showing a map like this because I think people think it's actually what's going to be piling up on the ground. And in this scenario, with our temperatures being so warm above freezing, I really don't see that coming to fruition. So that brings us to this. Yes, in the Portland metro area, downtown, our communities, the suburbs, surrounding areas, the West Hills, I anticipate much of our area during the sleeping hours. So if you're awake during the midnight to, say, 5 a.m. on Thursday morning, I think you'll be able to pick up on a few snowflakes across our area, falling actively from the sky. I think it could also stick on some grassy areas, specifically if you're up in elevation, say 500 to 1,000 feet, West Hills. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Now, as far as the snowy roads go, very similar to what so many of us saw on Tuesday morning with that brief coverage of the roads and then it quickly melts away and just turns back over to rain or even slush on some of the side streets, that then quickly turning back over to just water. I think that's a possibility for the Portland West Hills. For the rest of us, I really don't see that being the case unless there's maybe a back alleyway that no one drives on. Then maybe it sticks around for an hour or two. And that might be some of the concerns, especially for any of the schools that might be closer to 500 feet, where a school district might decide to go ahead and put pause on school for an hour or two. Again, that comes Thursday morning. And we'll have all the latest information, not only in the KOIN 6 News evening time frame, always on KOIN.com, but we always roll out all of those school delays, business closures, etc., on our KOIN 6 News this morning, which starts at 4:30 in the morning. So you can be sure to tune into that on CBS and then AM Extra over on Portland CW. So we'll keep you updated on all of that information. Of course, the latest always rolling in at KOIN.com. But as far as those roads go, again, Wednesday night, not a concern. Maybe a wintry mix, maybe a brief coverage of a light layer. And it's almost that snow that falls too, where you just take your thumb and push down on it on the street and it melts beneath your thumb. That's the type of snow this is going to be. That's going to carry over into Thursday morning, although that's our kind of window of opportunity where maybe things may be a little dicey. Give yourself just extra time as you head out the door. And then by Thursday afternoon, everything's back over to the rain showers, drying skies, in fact, and then that threat really begins to fade. As far as the winter supplies to maybe have, I already kind of mentioned this. If you're a small business owner, ice melt on the sidewalks, hey, that might be a good idea to maybe throw down Wednesday night or early Thursday morning as you get in. A push broom, maybe just brush away some of the snow that may have fallen on your windshield if your vehicle is exposed to the elements. And hey, I know we don't like to use umbrellas here in the Pacific Northwest, but if you're walking around midnight to 4 a.m. on Thursday, hey, maybe an umbrella will keep some of those wet, cold snowflakes off of you. But again, for the most part, this is really going to be a low-impact type of system for us as we work our way through the rest of the week. So by sunrise on Wednesday, I think many of us will be falling close to freezing. Again, that's not cold enough, especially with how warm we have been this winter season. A lot of our surfaces are kind of trapping in a lot of that heat. So that's not necessarily a concern for anything to freeze over, even at 32 degrees, as our winds are out of the south at about 2 to 4. And I know this graphic is a little aggressive as far as the potential of that wintry mix, but not expecting to see anything more than a brief shower or two. That goes just the same for the morning. I think by about 10 a.m., everything's back over to the rain. But then come, say, 4:30, 5 o'clock, maybe we start to see a few of those rain showers transition back over into some of that snow. And again, just a friendly reminder, snow closing in on Portland. But I think a lot of it's going to melt. You're not actually going to be able to see it piling up on many of our surfaces. As that KOIN 6 weather alert goes into full effect for us as we move our way into Wednesday night into Thursday, and as we carry ourselves into next week, look at those overnight lows. Yeah, definitely starting to warm up. Close to 40 degrees Saturday night into Sunday. Scattered rain showers. They start to intensify early next week. That's actually going to help to warm things back up. So that's going to be the scenario for us as we really start to move our way into next week. The threat of snow quickly starts to fade. I still think it'll be able to be snowy up in elevation, which bodes well for the skiers and snowboarders that have been enjoying this winter weather this week. But again, the days to stay weather aware is really going to be Wednesday night into Thursday. That's our best opportunity to see a taste of the winter weather return to the Pacific Northwest. And be sure to stay with the KOIN 6 weather team as we continue to track the ever-dynamic and ever-changing weather pattern as winter finally makes its appearance here in the Pacific Northwest.